Good morning and welcome to The Other Side. Today we have Mark Clarke, who is the current Interim Associate Provost for Faculty Development and Faculty Affairs. And we will explain to you what that means because I'm going to let Mark introduce himself, because when I asked for the resume, he gave me a 16-page resume, and the resume said that it was an abbreviated version of it. So you can imagine the things that Mark has done. So, Mark, you're going to have to explain what this resume means. So let's start with what you currently do.
Okay, well, George, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
I am the Interim Associate Provost for Faculty Affairs at the University of Houston. And my job and responsibilities surround faculty development and faculty affairs, so things like employment, promotion and tenure, academic standards for our faculty, and that is an interim role at present.
So does the faculty stand and salute when you walk by now?
No. And I wouldn't expect it to either.
Notoriously, university faculty never does that, does it?
Well, my job is to help them be successful and to facilitate their job.
Now, prior to this, that's when I thought we were going to talk about, and you were doing something else for the University of Houston. What was that?
Yes, I was. So I was the Associate Vice Chancellor and Vice President for Technology Transfer in our Division of Research, and I ran that office for approximately 3 years.
Yes.
And was part and parcel and helped to develop a innovation ecosystem at the university.
And obviously you're still doing that until they find someone permanently to replace you there.
Correct.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what is it that you did in that capacity.
So I think, and I'll take some time to beat the drum for the University of Houston. If you think about innovation and entrepreneurship, those are two things that I would say historically universities have not done very well. In terms of creating value, for example, from their intellectual property. The university is very lucky to have some very creative faculty, and I believe the second largest IP portfolio in the state of Texas at this point. That is growing.
Did you say second largest?
I think it's the second largest. It's certainly in the top three. Okay. In terms of our royalty revenues, just to give you a feel for that, probably 6 or 7 years ago, the university was generating somewhere around $300,000 a year in royalty revenues, and this year will be above $26 million.
Wow, what a whopping difference that is.
So, and again, we're lucky to have 2 blockbuster drugs as part of our portfolio, so a lot of the revenue comes from that. But there's been an institutional commitment to reinvest that royalty stream.
So how much of credit are you going to take of that?
Not very much.
Okay.
I hope I've done a good job of managing it, but the innovation occurred 8 to 10 years ago.
I see, okay.
Before I took that job.
Yes.
But seeing that and understanding that that's a way to elevate the university, as I say, there's an institutional commitment to building an innovation ecosystem.
Just before we leave that subject, let me ask you this. Now, when a faculty or a student develops something patentable, and obviously the university has royalty, as you said, does the inventor get to participate in this?
Oh, most definitely. In fact, that's one of the ways that faculty members are actually incentivized, not only to sort of perform the fundamental research that leads to the innovation itself, But the concept that they can be part of actually commercializing that technology is now sort of embedded in our culture. So, for example, the university has a royalty sharing policy where 40% of the royalty actually goes back to the inventor, which is, and I've worked in 3 other academic institutions and 1 federal agency, and that's actually a pretty reasonable,
generous sharing of it.
Sharing of it.
Mark, okay, so let's talk about the man behind this. Now, you are a highly accomplished scientist.
Thank you.
You know, you're originally from Ireland.
Yes, Ireland. I'm from the north of Ireland. I was born and brought up there, and went to college, both undergraduate and graduate, in northern England, in a city called Manchester.
I see. And then you had, then you came here to the United States on a scholarship.
Actually, I came here to be a junior faculty member at Harvard Med School.
Harvard Med School, okay. And for how long were you at Harvard?
So I was there as a non-tenure track, as a lecturer for about 2 years.
Yes.
And then
and what did you teach there?
Really, it was a research-oriented, although I was in the Department of Cell Biology and Anatomy at Harvard Med School.
And then, what is it that, you know, in your PhD, I thought you did something really interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So my PhD is actually in drug targeting, because my undergraduate degree is in pharmacology, and my PhD is in cell biology and biochemistry. And I was lucky enough to work with a group in Manchester that was working in conjunction with a leading scientist in Boston, which is why I ended up in Boston, around the magic bullet. So the magic bullet in those terms are antibody-targeted drugs. In this case, actually that was 25 years ago.
Yes.
And we were creating antibodies against the blood vessels of tumor cells. So.
Yes, and sort of you kind of investigating whether the vascular formations and the tumors there was a relationship there.
Yeah, so one of the sort of common events in solid tumor formation, so something other than a leukemia, for example, is that the tumor has to generate its own new blood supply. And it does that by stimulating blood vessel growth from the surrounding normal tissue. And that process is a little different than what we normally think about in such things as wound healing or normal blood vessel formation. And what we were investigating was what made those blood vessels and what made those endothelial cells, the cells that make up the blood vessels, different, so that we could then exploit that difference to kill the blood supply to the tumor.
Seems like pretty serious science.
It was cutting edge at the time, and still is, I believe.
Right, yes.
But there are a lot more of those biologics. They're called biologic-related treatments now in cancer biology.
Now, along the way, obviously, you know, you were co-author to several books and numerous articles, which make up half of your resume. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've written about.
So I think I've been very lucky to be able to interact and work with a variety of great mentors and scientists, but also in different fields. So as an undergraduate, I was in the area of pharmacology, and then I transitioned into cell biology and biochemistry, and did some clinical work with patients, cancer patients. When I moved to Boston as a postdoc right after to become a lecturer at Harvard Med School, that focus changed from cancer biology into skeletal muscle biology. And the commonality there was a particular growth factor that stimulates blood vessel growth in tumor vascular beds, but also causes blood vessel growth in response to exercise in skeletal muscle.
So what interested Harvard in you? What is it that they were investigating that kind of caught their attention, you know, at least your attention?
So the guy that I went to work for, a guy called Paul McNeil, who now is actually a chair professor in the Medical College of Georgia, he was working on the same growth factor I was working on except that I was working on it in a tumor vascular bed, and he was working on it in skeletal muscle.
I see.
And this concept, depending on how technical we want to go here, that particular growth factor, nobody really understood how it was released in response to various stimuli. And I showed how it was.
So you also went on to do a little bit of entrepreneurial work with some of the inventions that came out of U of H or some other university.
So after being in Boston, I moved to Georgia, to the Medical College of Georgia, and spent a couple of years there. After that, I moved to NASA Johnson Space Center here in Houston.
Yes.
That's how I got here.
Right.
As a National Research Council Fellow in the life sciences.
Tell us a little about what you did there.
So I transitioned away from, transitioned from the side of what happens when you exercise skeletal muscle to what happens when you don't exercise skeletal muscle, which is actually the problem in spaceflight with crew members and astronauts, is that because you're not mechanically loading your skeleton and your muscles, then you lose muscle.
So you must have worked with Dr. Lula.
Yes, Clarke.
Yes, okay. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine.
Yeah,
okay.
So he spends most of his time now in the technology transfer area.
Yes, okay.
And that's actually one of the interactions I had in my previous position at U of H, was with NASA's Office of Technology Transfer and a new consortium called the Technology Commercialization Center that NASA is a partner in.
So we could say that your career has been kind of high flight.
Sometimes, including, I believe, 22 missions on the KC-135 when I was there.
Not only just in a literal sense, but also at Harvard and some of the better schools around the country. So clearly, and also, you seem to have touched so many different areas of science. And then now, here you are, an administrator. How did that happen?
That's a good question, actually. Certainly when it came to the technology transfer side of things, my previous superior and mentor, Roth Bose, who came to the University of Houston probably 4 or 5 years ago as the VPR, the Vice President for Research. He was very passionate about innovation and entrepreneurship. And he was actually the one that sort of developed this different track inside his division, the Division of Research, around technology transfer and helped to make it an institutional priority, along with the President. The President is very much behind this concept.
Yes, she's been pushing. Boy, she's a force of nature, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
Mark, we're going to go for a break in a few seconds, but when we come back, I want to explore the role of technology in our society. What it has done, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and see where we want to take this, because you know so much about technology, from all over on so many different angles. But let's look at what it has done to humanity. We'll be back.
Hey, wow, you look great.
Thank
really
you.
great.
Thanks.
You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So you were gonna love this restaurant.
I know, I'm so excited to go.
I'm excited that you're excited.
What is that?
Oh, that's my scooter. Oh, it's cool. You'll love it, really.
No, 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 no.
Life sucks without a car. Bad credit's a bummer. Smart Choice Auto Group can finance anyone. Bad credit, worse credit, even terrible credit.
Welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Mark Clarke, the Interim Assistant Provost for Faculty Development and Faculty Affairs. In the first half of this conversation, we explored quite a bit of things that he has done and is doing. This half, we're going to talk about what technology has done to us, to the human species, to humanity. beginning probably with the wheel, we have come a long way. The question is, have we come down with the wheel, or have we gone up with the wheel? So let me ask Mark what he thinks. First of all, just let's talk about some of the major technological development in the world. What would you consider the major development that we've had over our lifetime? Not our lifetime, I'm talking about the lifetime of the human species.
I think the discovery of electricity and everything that has then enabled, yes. Including our information technology, which I think is probably the area that has most rapidly grown. I mean, yes. I think both you and I remember when there wasn't cell phones.
Yes.
And that is, I think that has changed the nature of the world and the way, not only from a technological aspect, but the way that we interact socially.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's one of the, and that's something probably that we could talk about further, which is the good and the bad and the ugly mm-hmm. Aspect of how and what that type of technology has driven in society.
So let's go back and look at perhaps, and I've always been fascinated about the invention of the wheel. I mean, how did they come about that? And if they hadn't, where would we be?
Would we had horse and buggies with square wheel?
Or was it just sort of a natural thing? They saw the rocks rolling around, and they say, well, you know what? It seemed like we would do something with this. Yeah.
Yeah, I suspect that it was
yeah.
in terms of if we look back, certainly the sort of the archaeology. Of, for example, some of the original pyramid builders or large, even some of the Neolithic societies, we know that they used rollers
yes.
To move heavy objects.
And then also, the technology that they must have used to build, the pyramids and the Stonehenges. Mm-hmm. I mean, I went down there and looked at it, and only when you actually go up there and look up, you realize how in the world
did they move them?
Did they move that stuff? So there must have been. I mean, just cannot be just human muscle. I'm sure there was something.
The concept of the lever and the hoist and the pulley.
Yeah.
And being able to sort of multiply force in those ways.
Yeah.
I think is central to that, but. The use of different materials as we went through our evolution, or our evolution is not necessarily a good word for the different civilizations that have gone before. But, as I say, going back to the wheel, we know they use trees as rollers, as slides.
Yes.
Somebody probably saw that and went, that appears to be a natural shape to put on rather than having a whole wheel.
So you don't subscribe to the idea that they used mental powers to move things, did you?
No, I don't.
All right.
Okay. I do enjoy watching Ancient Aliens.
Yes.
But I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that that's where our technology came from.
Okay. So I guess in terms of sort of modern technology, locomotion was one of them. I mean, we invented the steam engine, and then we substituted. I mean, using coal, and we move quite a bit of things across, mm-hmm. large areas. I think clearly that was something that did us a lot of good, but it also created the coal, the issues that we're still dealing with, the discovery of coal as a fuel, and then we have polluted so many lakes and rivers and so many bodies of water, and God knows what else. So how would you evaluate that?
So fossil fuels,
mm-hmm.
they were definitely something that enabled the industrial age. I don't think there was any alternative to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the more sort of pertinent questions at this moment in time is certainly the developed world mm-hmm. would like to see our developing nations not use fossil fuels the same way. but they're still a cheap source of energy and power. So it's difficult to tell the developing world you shouldn't use fossil fuels.
Oh, yeah,
because
you can't tell them now since we're using.
Because we
consume half the production. Yeah. Okay.
But in terms of just the way that they use them, in terms of the potential amount of pollution caused by over coal burning, for example, relative to say a clean coal fire unit here in the States. So I think that's sort of problematic. But there's no doubt that transportation infrastructure, power generation, and then being able to harness it for particular tasks is central to technological development.
Just to kind of sound contrarian.
You, George? Never.
The fossil fuel, there's nothing more natural than the fossil fuel, right? I mean, it's been underground for millions and millions of years. They're only, the dead trees and dead animals and all of that got together and produced. It's nothing more natural than that, is there?
Well, that's one way of viewing it.
So if we use this natural material to fuel, in some paradigm, it might look like a great idea. We are not infusing chemicals and trying to do things like in nuclear energy. We could even say that's natural. But what I'm saying is this is a fairly natural process. So how did it end up being so bad for us? How did it end up being so injurious to our environment, our health, our whole? Is it just the overuse, or is it just?
Well, I think part of what you've got to look at in terms of, for example, coal and oil is a trapping of biomass, which was then taken out of the carbon cycle. So it's no longer, it was sort of trapped and removed from that overall energy balance, if you think of it that way. And we've released it back into that in a very short period of time. As you said, it's been there for millions of years, and it formed over millions of years. Right. And we've really only been burning it for the last 200 years, and we're doing it very rapidly. So I think that's the underlying problem, is that if you were to continue to recycle that into the ecosystem at the same rate it was put in, then it probably would be a natural cycle. But that's not how we're utilizing those resources.
So then there are those deniers who say, there is no such, we are not, as human beings, the man is not destroying this. This is just cyclical. We've always had these cycles come and go. We've had earthquakes, and we've had volcanoes, and we've had comets hitting us, and apparently the dinosaurs became extinct because of that. So what are we so panicking right now? It's just another cycle. It'll come and go.
Which, on a personal level, could take all humans off the face of the earth.
I see. Okay.
And I think, I won't weigh into the global warming argument in terms of. I still think that the preponderance of data and interpretations are that it is human activity that's causing certainly the spike, the rise in temperature in some parts of the world, and then also the lower temperatures. I think more recently it's been called climate change rather than global warming. We have much more weather activity on the face of the earth than that has been recorded in the last several decades. I think what's probably, from my perspective, when I have that discussion and potential argument with somebody that is a naysayer, is the underlying problem with this is that it's a even if it's a low probability event, it has a high impact, which is that if we go out of balance, how hard will it be to bring us back into balance? And during that period of time, there's going to be a lot of change in terms of the environment.
One of the arguments that I heard, which it kind of stopped me in my tracks, is they said, listen, these cockroaches have lasted 400 million years around all of the disasters that are come and gone. So they say, well, we're pretty resilient too. We can survive this as well. So,
well, for example, cockroaches are pretty resistant to, for example, radioactivity.
yes.
They are very able to resist particular types which a human could not. So,
So you think we should
we're
do some
different.
gene splicing there?
That's probably not. I think the concept of gene therapy is upon us in certain ways, but we really still have only scratched the surface of how specifically human cells and the person is impacted by its genes.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the internet. What do you think? What is the impact of internet on the human species, and the good and the bad? Let's talk about that.
So if we start thinking about the good, it's become an amazing tool for communication across cultures, across countries. I think a lot of the barriers from for example, a country perspective have dropped in that people can reach out and talk to somebody on the other side of the world. It always amazes me that I can get on, talk to my family in Ireland without delay, see them in real time, sitting in my living room, and that's 9,000 miles away. So I think that's a positive element just in the human contact sphere. I think from educational perspective and ready access to information, that has changed the way that we view the world. I think the downside to that, and I know this is something that as a professor and a lot of my colleagues have the same issue, is that just because it's on the internet does not necessarily mean it's true.
True, yes.
And you do run into that a lot.
Just because it's on Google does not mean that it is true. So yeah, that is fact. The other thing is, I mean, there is some talk about internet having interrupted our social life. People tend to spend a lot of time with the internet, so that I think has had an impact. But on the other hand, it also has tied so many people together, and therefore it has, look, Facebook, more people are talking to more people. And so we are becoming, in some ways, we've become more social than we've ever been. And even a recluse in a house gets on his Facebook and sort of befriends people, right? So so that being said, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. It was indeed a pleasure to have you on the show. I've been threatening to bring you on this for a while, and you finally did come. Thank you, and congratulations on your new assignment, and looking forward to having you back.
Thank you very much, George. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, and we'll see you next on The Other Side.